Established in 1887, St Mirren Football Club was named after the patron saint of Paisley. But who was the saint and what brought him to Paisley? Can you tell me who the patron saint of Paisley is?
St Mirren.
And could you tell me anything about where the saint's from, his origins?
Well, I think it's Ireland, do you know?
Do you know anything about St Mirren, the patron saint of Paisley?
Yeah, he's got a brae named after him.
After speaking to the people of Paisley, we're still no closer to the facts. But we might know one man who will. We spoke to Bishop Dionne Kennedy to see what he knew about the saint.
Yeah, there's a lot been written about St Mirren, but I think probably now we can separate fact from fiction. Some of the fiction's quite funny, really, that one story says that when St Mirren wanted to spread the gospel in Ireland, he went to see the King of Ireland, who was entirely against it, wouldn't let Mirren speak to anyone. So what he did is he noticed that the king's wife was just about to give birth, so he prayed that the king would experience her pregnancy pains or labour pains, and the king was in agony for 3 days, then came to Mirren begging. He said, "Oh Mirren, take this away." So Mirren prayed again and the pains were taken away and he was allowed to evangelise Ireland. So according to that story, he was able to spread the good news because a man had a lower pain threshold than a woman. It's clearly fiction, but it's a good story, isn't it? True story is, what we know is fairly minimal, fairly limited. What we could probably say about him is how he was remembered. He was remembered as what they called a glorious confessor. That just really means someone who witnessed to the gospel. He probably witnessed in a really attractive way, so that when he died, he'd also been known as not just a holy man but a miracle worker. And when he died, immediately people started to leave candles at his grave, and those candles were still a tradition, still burning centuries later. I mean, literally centuries later, 300, 400, 500, 600 years later. So I think if people are lighting a candle 500 years later to someone, I think it's what it's saying is that this is somebody brought light into our world, light into Paisley, and we just want to remember that.
So he ended up in Paisley, but where did the saint come from?
So Mirren's roots were that he was born in Ireland and educated in a monastery in Belfast, taught by a famous saint there, St Comgall. And St Comgall was responsible for teaching St Columba, who may or may not have been a classmate of Mirren. And Comgall must have been a great teacher because he inspired them to remain in the monastery, become monks really for the spreading of the gospel. And as we heard, that Mirren spread the gospel in Ireland, but then was desperate, like Columba, to come to Scotland. And so he sailed over to Scotland and tried to do a little bit of work in Dumbarton, and then in Loch Lomond, and then Kilsyth, then in Fife, and then I went down to Kirkcudbrightshire and Ayrshire. Then eventually found, of all those places, the best of places to settle was in Paisley. So he set up a little settlement in Paisley, began to preach the gospel from Paisley, then built a church, a settlement, a church. Paisley actually means the large church. So, and then just settled there really, and really preached the gospel from those. So that's his origins, and that's his really kind of where he settled.
We all love Paisley, but of all the places in the world, why did the saint settle here?
What brought him to Paisley, you could say, couldn't you, that it was maybe the Holy Spirit, in one sense, brought him to Paisley. He was a missionary, loved the gospel, loved God, loved the people, and loved Scotland as well. This was just after the Romans had left in about the 6th century. We're entering into the Dark Ages, and the monks were really concerned that civilization kept going. And so they came to places where the Romans had left just to keep civilization, culture going. So there would be divine reasons. But I also like to think, you know, he could have settled in Dumbarton, could have settled in Loch Lomond, Kilsyth, all of these places, Ayrshire. I think what brought him to Paisley was the nicest place to come.
Not many people have a football team named after them. So what would the saint make of it?
Well, you were saying, would he enjoy watching St Mirren? I think he might have been the St Mirren manager, because there's the myth of his life is that he was able to inflict great pain. Right? But also, the story of his life is he was a great miracle worker. And I think if you're a St Mirren fan, a buddy, as we all are, you know what it's like to experience a lot of pain, but you also know what it's like every now and again to experience a few miracles. So he'd have been there somewhere, I'm sure.